The next speaker is Félix David. He's working the head of pipeline, or something like this. Lead developer or head of pipeline at Normaal. He worked previously at SuperProd, and he's a long-time user of Kitsu. We are super happy also to have him here. And yeah, now it's your turn, Félix. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. Hello, everyone. I will try to speak in correct English for the next minute. So I've been recruited to Normaal to set up a pipeline for 3D production, and the challenge was to build it over on Blender. And the studio had a very strong 2D culture. It only produced 2D series before, so it was first step into 3D production. But as you could imagine, they wanted the same process as 2D, but with 3D technology. So something like you could all the time see something close to the final render, like because in 2D you can see the image you are watching is close to the final rendering, and in 3D it's hard because you have a lot of technical steps before with shading, animation, camera, lighting, whatever, and the director wasn't used to this kind of process, so they wanted a pipeline which could bring almost close to the final render all the time. They had a lot of internal habits, and the challenge was to bring automation for the artists, but not constrain them to things, only helping them clicking less and automating process which would take time, which is the base of pipeline. But sometimes the pipeline may add more steps and add more pain to for the artist. So the main philosophy is to avoid adding more steps, and if there are the same amount of steps, just do them another way, but not add more pain to the process, and free them from the issue, free them from the constraint that the computer is adding to the production. Because when you're drawing by hand, you have a lot of things, and computer add a lot of technical things to the production. So we have to free them for these extra steps. And the third challenge was to create a pipeline for 3D, but which could work for 2D future projects. So we had to build something strong and long-lasting for the future upcoming productions. The production was woolly like wool, and it was 52 episodes, 11 minutes each one, standard format. We had around 80 animators, 4 or 5 TD pipeline team all the time, and we had to work in 3 facilities, Angoulême, Paris, and Quebec, synchronizing the data all around these facilities. I will show you how it looks like, just you can imagine. So this is a kind of render. It's a very flat render and fronty kind of animation, like I will show you. Oh, no sound, but you know, there is a lot of hair and fabric style. So this could only, we have done some tests on with stop motion, and we brought this render to in 3D because it was possible only for 3D in 3D to do the whole series with this rendering. So yeah, you can see there is some images. So it's really fixed shot you and in front. So the tool we used was OpenPype, which became AYON, Kitsu for production tracking. In our 3D production, we had Blender, and now we are running 2D production with Toon and Adobe. I will explain maybe detail this more later. Why AYON? So I will talk about AYON, but imagine it was OpenPype before. Why AYON, and why choosing open source with a small studio, because we are not a very big studio, for as a very first step into 3D, and why not something from scratch, like just building some scripts to help. They already had scripts with the 2D production to help with Toon Boom, Harmony, and such, but it wasn't a unified system. The main thing I insisted for open source is because, and choosing something existing, because you cannot anticipate all the needs you will need. Yeah, when you talk with the production, they think about many things, but not everything. And using something which already has been tested and developed helps you, because most of the use case you will have to deal with have already been addressed and solved. So many things we were asked for, we just had to look into AYON and see, oh, it already exists, so we can just configure it correctly. And so we added a lot of things like the linker, the sync process between Kitsu and AYON, for example. We introduced this into AYON. It was our first contribution to AYON. And also sharing the code as much as possible was a challenge. I had it to the team, to me. I was the team in the very beginning, the only one. But when the team arrived, everything had to be pushed into and proposable to AYON, because it helps to design something that others could use. So it's more generic, and even though it's slower process of development, when it's accepted and merged and used in the main code base, you know that it's been tested. It will last a long time, and it forces to design something in a better way. So we are very happy and we really are satisfied with this process, even though it's slower. But we insist that, okay, we must keep going with this kind of procedure. The main philosophy of the pipeline is it's non-destructive. When something has been published, it's never changed, never altered. If you want to change something, you have to publish a new version. You have to dissociate task from product. A task is, I'm asking someone to make a data we can pipe and add in the pipeline, a production data, and the product is this data. But these are two different things. You could make, with AYON, you could make a whole production with only one task. You could call it like fabrication, building, whatever, production, and you would still have something correctly like ordered, something correctly structured, because you can publish products, you can publish things that you could reuse in the production, but this is not the task, the output task, which is mandatory. And also, the map is not the territory. It means that there is too many things in your production, and there's a lot of things, and we want to rely as much as possible on existing things. The file system is something which already works, so I don't need to build a database which could handle files. I want to, with AYON, I can only just resolve the path of the data I want by site. For my computer, I know that if I want to this file, I just have to ask AYON, and he will say, okay, the path to the file is there. And not giving it to me, because if everyone in the production asks for a file, and many files, it's very heavy, and you have to set up a very big server to provide all this data. If you only ask for a path to something, it's much lighter, and doesn't need a large and heavy infrastructure to run your production. And having something a bit decentralized, with workstation who cache their own data, if the server crashes, you can still work. Artists may still work on their work files, but the server is coming back at some point, but it's not mandatory to have it. So if the server is down, the production can still keep going. In AYON, the structure is by a folder. Conceptually, it's like a name of an asset. It's not exactly that, but yeah. You have product by your folder, and a version by a stack of versions, and by version, a representation is a way to deal with a data. An image product, maybe a flat PNG, an EXR with layer, or a PSD. These are different representations of the same data. It's still an image, but represented in a different way. Same for a model. In AYON also, that was I was talking about earlier. The products are typed, so it's an image, a render, a model, and it allows you to perform a reliable sanity check, a validation. When the artists say, I publish, I'm done with working, I publish, you can run, you know it's an image, the instance, the data you want to publish, you know it's been tagged as an image, and you want for your pipeline an image to be in this configuration. So with this, you know, okay, I'm dealing with an image, I have to perform these checks. And it makes sure that what you push in the pipeline is conform for the further use of this data. And that's bring me to the last point. If the data is reliable and configured in the correct way, it's really easy to load it into DCCs, because you know exactly with what you are dealing with. So you have no bad surprise when loading something that it's not in the correct format. No, everything has been checked before and is compatible. I figured during the production that the asset workflow is not the short workflow. There are two different things. Asset is, as we designed it, the asset is by design a composite something. It's made of several things. It could be like an essential brick, but it could also be composed with things. And so we had, for example, for an entity, a character, we have the geometry, the shading, and the rig. The rig brings the shading and the geometry, but you can also publish only the geometry, which means that if you want the character in the background, it's easy to only bring the geometry, not the rig, it's lighter, and you have all the data you may want accessible. So the constant question was, okay, what thing I have to publish to be reused in the production in the future? A collection, which is so an asset, like for example a set with a set of a forest with many trees. It's a composition of many assets. And I started to design a short workflow like this, with always scattering the data. Like after layout, I was exporting all the on the animation, all the animation with the set, the camera, and to build it back in the animation and split and merge at each step. And this doesn't work well. The shot workflow, as we designed it, is more an incremental process. The layout will provide the base file for the animation, which will provide the base file for the FX, for the render, and for the compositing, and so ever. Okay, after there is the final rendering, but you got it. So it's more straightforward than the asset. We had to deal with a big problem, which was constantly modifying the asset. The production was asking, like, okay, we have a better shader for the fabric, for the hair. Could we add it and update it to all the shots that have been layouted, animated, but not validated by the director? And many times we had to update already animated shots, and we had a strong script, Blender in AYON, but Blender integration, which was switching files and rigs from one file to another, but keeping the transform of the transforms of the geometry and the rigs and the modifiers, and so we had to, to deal with this all the time. I also had a script tool which would open all the workfiles I was mentioning. It will open Blender in a UI, make all the changes, and republish a new version of the animation. And we also did use this tool for building in the base workfile for animation or layout. And we had also a hero version, which is a master for in layout. The layout scene was only referencing the hero. So because there is a time gap between between the artist layout has finished and when the animation starts. So sometimes it was 3 months. And so we wanted to have the last update of the character when the animation start, but by keeping the animation of the layout. So we had to deal with such updates, and having using the Blender link helped us to have to keep this up to date with the hero version. Hero version is only always the last published version. It's a file, and always the last published version is written in this file. It's not a stack of versions. That was I was evoking a bit earlier. Like extracting, I kept this, like for animation, I was still extracting animations, but not trying to reimage it all the time. This helped to reuse a lot of data, because when you have you run a small production with low budget, you have to reuse sometimes a lot of data you already created, and so having this animation already accessible helped the production to, okay, I want this animation from episode 3, shot 2, from this character, and I could just import it on my rig, and it worked really like straightforward. We had, because we didn't want to have a lot of very big files with like imagine a forest and with a lot of trees and many characters. We had to deal with file dependencies, because in Blender you can have links to other files. So in OpenPype AYON, the file dependencies are listed in the database, which helps to pre-sync file on destination when they are assigned to artists. For example, if an artist works at home and is plugged into our pipe, it's assigned, the task is assigned to him. And in background, AYON, we coded a service which like will listen this and say, okay, this artist needs these files of dependencies, because in the breakdown of Kitsu, we know in the breakdown that this character will be needed, this set will be needed. So pre-sync them. The artist doesn't even know, and when he clicks on the task to work, everything is already there, because it has been synced in background. And no waiting for dependencies to come, which is tedious and long. And we had a build process for sets and layouts, working on the same technique. And for rendering, we relied a lot on the power we already had. We listened about range computing and whatever. We don't have the budget to have a lot of clouding rendering, so we had some rendering, smart rendering, always rendering on the artist workstations. With OpenCue was managing this, which is still an open source project. And when every minute workstation was available, it was launching a rendering, or a process. A process could also be a building for layout task. Like if you want the layout artist to start working fast, you don't want them to wait to click on build first work file. You want them to click on open task, and the work file is already prepared and built. So we had a service to pre-build the work files. I would like to show you some work we've done with Swan here, and Rémi Soyer from InRev, which is a way of representing the data flow we had. This work is available online. It's HAL. On HAL, it's scientific. It's open editing for open science. It's editing for open science in the HAL. It's a website, and you can find this with our names: Swan Martinez, Félix David, Rémi Soyer, ATI, InRev, INREV. And you can see our data flow, how the things were referenced, the process we used, like we had a build there, which gave a layout scene with a blend file with reference to this kind of assets, what is published, and so. And this is really helpful to understand how it worked and what automation we had. And almost everything is there. This is the main teaching I got, that you cannot have your perfect universal pipeline that everyone could use, but you can build a good one which sustains the studio culture and helps to add fluidity to the production. And it helps a lot to share it with the community because, as I said, the other one who you are coding with may be you in the future. Sometimes you build something, you forget it, and you realize when you need it, like 1 year later, that it already exists because you did it and you forgot, and it's still in the code base, but you don't have to recode it from scratch. That maybe you would have done this if you didn't remember at some point that this thing was existing. I'm done with my presentation. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Félix. Is there any question? No? No questions? There were so many things. I should have prepared my own questions. Yeah, you mentioned the fact that you have to sustain the studio culture. Maybe you have some example of things you did at Normaal that could illustrate this, or?
For example, the fact that we had to have almost final render all the time, which was inherited from the 3D culture production, and we had to render many times. Something I didn't mention, but when we were in animation, the publish wasn't running. It was running play blast, but also triggering a render low def. But in light with lights, because the lights were already made in the set, because it was like close to like stages, like a scene, a theater scene. Sometimes it really looked like a theater scene. So everything in face, facing the set, the stage. So the lights were really tight to the set we had. So this way we could render low def animation for the director who couldn't figure with a Playblast in a 3D OpenGL rendering. This is something we had to do to fit the studio culture we had.
Okay, super clear. And now I have another question. You said that asset workflow is different than shot workflow. Was there something that happened that breaks, or what leads you to this conclusion?
Because I failed to handle them in the same way, both. Like in the very beginning, I started to work with shots the exact same way I was working with assets, like with scattering all the data I could, like splitting the geometry from the rig, from the shading to be reusable. And this with when you have animations, set, camera, it could work, but it's useless because the animation is right after the layout and it uses the same configuration for most of the things. I just had to convert the hero version I had in layout to versioned versions in the scene with automated process. But that was all. So it could be possible, but it's not worth it. You can just use the last work file used and validated as a first work file for the next step of the shot process.
Okay, thank you. Is there any question? No. Okay, so that's it. We are at the end. So first, let's say thank you to Félix for this presentation.